Hi, and welcome to another podcast with Hanaz Writers Limited. My name is Charlotte, and if you haven't heard any of my podcasts before, then check out Hanaz Writers YouTube and Spotify channels. I've got a few up there already. So today's podcast is about how to help students to understand what they're reading, and we're going to talk a little bit about how this could help writers when they are writing their books. So to begin with, I'm just going to talk about some of the ways that students can read the books to better understand what they have read. When young students learn to read in English, they need to focus on the letters and the sounds of those letters. We call this the phonics of the letters. And we look at how they are used and how the different letters are put together to create a word. For example, they might see the word cat, which is C-A-T, and it sounds with each of the letters phonetically, it would be A. Then we teach them to blend the sounds together. So you got at, then we tell them a little bit faster, blend them a bit more, and it becomes cat. So then they need to connect the word cat to what it means. And this is why we have lots of books with words and pictures. So they see the word cat, they see the animal, the picture of the animal, cat. And then whenever they say the word cat, it brings to mind that image and they can see a visual of the word. If there's a real animal, a real cat, then they can point to it, make the association that this animal is called a cat. So a cat then becomes the word of the thing, so they can name it. And then if they've had any experiences of a cat, they can include all of that to their associations of the word and to the animal as well. So when you think about reading, it is actually quite a lot for a young person to try and do, or any person who's learning English second language. They might even begin to translate the word in their head into their first language. So if you're Spanish, it might be like gato, or in Japanese, neko, or something along the same lines. In French, it'll be chat, etc. So just take a moment. If you've ever tried to learn a new language, how did you process the words? How did you read the words? And then how did you make the translation to associate the object with that new word? How did you get around it? How did you do it? And I have done this before because I was learning to speak French. At one point I was learning how to read Chinese and speak Chinese, Mandarin. And it gives you a bit of a headache because you're really trying, you've got all your neurons in your brain trying to associate things and trying to create new connections and trying to really learn a new language. And it gives you a bit of a headache because your head's working actually over time. Your brain is going, and it's trying to learn everything at once. Sometimes we expect children to just be able to pick up the language quickly. And they do. They pick up their first language super fast. Sometimes we even expect them to understand everything that we say. And it may not always be possible. So when people communicate and tell stories, we use words and body language as well. We change our tone of voice to make things dramatic, make things exciting or sad and upsetting or bored and tiring. Or we can make it super fast and exciting and very quick. So we always use different voices for different characters. And we do that to show who's speaking and how they're sounding and what they're like. So when children learn how to read for themselves, they have to work out the meaning of their words and they have to show what they've understood, what have they read, basically. This is shown by asking them comprehension questions. For example, if we're reading a story about someone who lost their dog, we'll say, who in the story lost their dog? And it might be the boy lost his dog or the girl lost her dog. And then it's up to the child to then read through everything and say, it was so-and-so lost their dog. And again, this just shows understanding of the story, what events took place. And usually when we ask the comprehension questions, we stick to the WH questions, where, why, and when. And there's also the H question, how. So then children are able to go back through what they've read and they read through it to find the answers. And this is a tricky question that I find my year 2 struggle with. They're 6 to 7 years old. And they sometimes have trouble retrieving answers to the questions. So they would read a story, not really understand what they've read. And then when you ask them a question, they'll go, I don't know, or they're not sure, or they can't pick out the answer exactly, because sometimes there's inference in the text. So you guess, you have to kind of predict what will happen next. You have to kind of guess, how's this person feeling right now? So it's hard, because also language is hard as well. There's some vocabulary as well. Remember, they're 6 and 7 years old. Most of their vocabulary is pretty basic, and there's some words that they probably wouldn't know. So when they read it, they'll read it, but they won't understand it. And you got to explain to them, you got to read around the word to work out what it means. Sometimes it is just difficult. There's a word there like encouraged. And it's hard because you then have to explain to them, what does encouraged mean? So it means that you're trying to get someone excited, or you're trying to make them feel like they want to do something, motivated. And then they ask, what does motivated mean? So then you have to use another word to explain what that word means. And you end up with this, what does that mean? And so then you go into the nitty gritty of it, and then you try to explain a simple sentence. He encouraged her to join the club. So it's very interesting that's what I find interesting anyway, when I'm trying to teach my year 2s comprehension questions. I find that there's also sequencing questions. Sometimes when you're trying to tell them, put these sentences into the correct order to tell you what happened in a story, that means you sequence them. So first this happened, then this happened, then this happened. Usually these questions are like 5 different sentences. So then you have to read through the whole thing the whole story again, and work out which sentence was the first thing that happened, then what happened after that, then what happened after that, so on. I think the prediction questions are also quite tricky, only to some children, because some children, they don't have an imagination to work out or to guess what will happen next. And it is tricky. Some kids just don't have it. They'd rather just be told what happens, or they just want to know what happens in the story. And some children have great imagination and this could happen at the end of the story. So say we were reading about dinosaurs, and then we said that dinosaurs went extinct. How do you think they went extinct? And then they can have great answers and say, we think they were playing in the water, then one of them started to drown, then the others tried to help them, and then they all ended up drowning. Something silly like that, basically. And then you tell them what actually happened. They're like, what? A meteor crashed into the earth and then boo. You never see that happening. Never in a million years, because it was too much. It's a little bit much for them to think about, really. So all these types of comprehension questions are asked, and they help to ensure the reader has fully understood what they have read. It also shows that they know what happened in the story, why something happened, and then they can even explain how the characters felt about the events and how they felt towards each other, and what kind of thoughts they may have had while these events were happening. So why is this a good thing for writers to know? Well, first and foremost, authors want to write a story. They want to communicate a story to tell others something has happened. And I think for authors, it's knowing what ages children are, understanding different ideas and the different concepts, then really helps them to write for their target audience. Let's say, for example, that you want to write a children's book and you're thinking about children aged 0 to 4. When you think about it, they have really simple sentences. They have lots of color and lots of pictures and images to show children what's happening. It's to help them to understand what they have read, and they can look at the visuals for clues, and it helps them to understand what is happening in a story. Then think about a child who's a bit older, maybe 5 to 10. And now these books will have less visuals. They might have some, but they might even start to be chapter books. So you have chapter 1, 2, and 3, maybe up to 10, 12 chapters. It's got a lot more words in them, and the words now can be more advanced rather than just simple and basic. They can include some difficult vocabulary. They can include some difficult concepts and ideas, especially when they get to 10 years old. And they want to get children to read what's inside and get through a good book. Then if you move up to the ages of 11 to 18, then you might get no visuals at all. lots more chapter books, and a lot more pages of text. So it might be maybe up to 200 pages long. It might be less. It might be 100 something long. And then lots more chapters. And the storylines become a lot more complex. You could have each character have their own storyline, and then they intertwine their stories together with the main character. Or they could all be main characters. And then you have lots of thoughts and lots of feelings and lots more things to explore, a lot more to look at, and as each character goes on their own individual journey. So authors should have a basic knowledge about ranges of books, different ages of children, different styles of writing that they can use to communicate their stories. If they didn't have this, then they would probably struggle and have a bit of trouble writing for their target audiences. A child who's 3 years old would probably not enjoy a book with 100 pages. There's no visuals, there's long wordy sentences, and they probably just end up sitting there ripping the pages out because they don't know what else to do with it, and they can't read yet either. So that's why you see kids probably, you've seen those kind of funny montages of kids just ripping books, and they're just taking a book that's a novel, 200, 300 pages long, and they're just ripping it, because what else can they do with it? If they were given a hardback book made of cardboard, each page had lots of visuals, maybe 5 or 6 words on them, and then you can show them the visuals of the words. You've all seen baby books, I'm sure. If you haven't seen one, then go to your library or go to your bookstore, look in the kids section, look for children's books. And it is literally a page. It's got pictures of people and the words underneath each other person. So you can have a mum with the word mum, dad with the word dad, baby with the word baby, sister, brother. But it could be the names that the author has created. So you could have Biff. I don't know if anyone's read the Biff, Chip and Kipper books. They were my favourites as a kid. I used to read them all the time at my infant school. I loved them. It was about Biff, Kip and Chipper. They were siblings. They had a mum and a dad and a dog called Floppy. I used to go on these magic adventures. They'd find a key, I think it was a key, and then the key would then unlock these doors, and they'd go on an amazing adventure somewhere. And I really did love those books. But it was simple sentences, wasn't very tricky, easy to read. So it was a lot of fun as a kid to read those kind of stories. So you can always think about it, think about your audience. I think that's the best thing to do. Think about your audience, and then think about what kind of words you could use, what kind of visuals, if you wanted to have visuals. Graphic novels are great. Comic books. Anyone read any comic books? Japanese manga, awesome. I really love the drawings in Japanese manga. But it's not just the drawings. The storyline is brilliant as well. If you ever take the time to just read the storyline, ignore the visuals, just read the storyline of a manga, it's so complex. And the themes are quite dark, I have to say. If you don't have time to read a manga book, then I would say watch an anime. On Netflix, they've got lots of different anime cartoons. And it seems like, it's just a cartoon, but it's actually got like a darker theme to it. And some of the themes are quite a little bit very grown up themes to a cartoon, I would say. If you've ever watched Attack on Titan, maybe don't start with that one, but Attack on Titan is a crazy anime. Anyway, if you don't know what it is, look it up. I think on Netflix I saw there was a family ex-spy or spy family about 3 individuals who become a family, and they're all involved in the spy world and the business in their own way. And then there's the story of their 3 lives, and they're intertwined together. And even though one of them is a kid, she's a little girl, who's about 6 or 7, she's also got very grown-up thoughts about her, even as a 6-year-old. But she's also very young and naive, so she also has kid thoughts as well. So it's quite interesting when you watch it. But again, the themes are very adult, and it's a lot of being adopted by new parents, living in a new country, living in a different way, and there's spies and people who want to do spy work and stuff like that. So I really like that. I quite like that. Anyway, I digress, as I usually do. So let me know what you think. Are there any other ways that we can help students to understand what they read? Why do you think authors need to know the different levels and different stages that their readers go through before they even write their stories? What is the purpose of it? I've given my ideas and my thoughts of why I think they need to know. But if you have any others, please leave a comment below. And that would be great. We can start. That'll be good. So thank you very much for listening to my podcast. I do hope that you've enjoyed it. If you're interested in becoming an author, then visit hanazwriters.co.uk. They are a publishing company. They are so great. They're based in London and they are supporting writers and authors to get their stories published. I'm working with them to do these podcasts. And so thank you very much, you guys. I love doing these podcasts for you. And Hanaz Writers is a great platform to get you started in the world of writing. You can also follow them on Instagram at hanaz.writers. They also have a Facebook and a Twitter page. So please like and subscribe. And of course, the YouTube channel, which is where you might be listening to my podcast, and also on Spotify. So thank you very much. Leave your comments below. I will be making some more podcasts, so listen out for them. Until next time, bye.